As to count one, we, the jury, find the defendant, Nicole Mitchell, guilty of the charge of burglary in the first degree.
There's that breaking news at 5. You heard it there. Minnesota State Senator Nicole Mitchell found guilty on both counts against her. The verdict was read in the last half hour after her long-awaited week-long trial. Good evening. I'm Dan Wolf. Briggs is off tonight. Thanks for joining us. After hours of deliberation, a jury found Senator Mitchell guilty of breaking into and burglarizing her stepmother's home. Northern News Now's Laura Lee is live in studio with the latest developments from the courtroom. Laura?
Yeah, Dan, as you just saw there, Senator Nicole Mitchell displayed little emotion as the verdicts were being read. The jury returned that guilty verdict and convicted Mitchell of first-degree burglary and possession of burglary tools in connection to that incident from last April, wrapping up a week-long trial of the Democratic senator. Mitchell took the stand in her own defense this week, admitting she broke into the home of her late father, Rod Mitchell, but saying she was there to check on her stepmother, Carol Mitchell, who suffers from Alzheimer's disease. However, the jury saw body camera footage of Mitchell telling police repeatedly after her arrest that she broke into the home because her stepmother refused to give her items of sentimental value from her father, including some of his ashes. Mitchell's father died in 2003, or 23 rather, at the age of 72. He'd been married to Mitchell's stepmother, Carol, for nearly 40 years. The prosecution says the body camera footage shows that she knew she was committing a crime when she went into her stepmother's home and took personal items belonging to her late father. Now, the Democrat from Woodbury has maintained her innocence and refused to resign from her seat despite calls from her to do so from her Republican colleagues. Already, Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy was quick to issue a statement following the verdict, saying that Mitchell planned to resign if convicted and that they expect her to follow through on that pledge.
Thank you, Laura. The verdict sets in motion what's likely to be now a political chain reaction in St. Paul. Northern News Now Capitol reporter Quinn Gorham breaks that down for us tonight.
For months, the Minnesota Senate Ethics Committee has put off a decision on a complaint filed against Senator Nicole Mitchell, deferring action until she had her day in court. Now that day has come, and with a guilty verdict, we can expect a number of things in the coming days. Senate DFL Majority Leader Aaron Murphy has already issued a statement saying that, quote, Senator Mitchell has told colleagues that she intended to resign if found guilty of this crime, and that she, quote, expects her to follow through on that pledge. If she doesn't resign, we should expect the subcommittee on ethics to meet as soon as next week to discuss next steps. It's very likely they'd vote to expel her from the body. Either way, this likely means that the Senate DFL will be losing a member, taking the balance of power in the Senate to 33-33. It's likely a special election could be held before the legislature returns next February, but in the meantime, Republicans will technically have shared power in the state Senate. It would be a similar situation to the one we saw earlier this year after Senator Kerry Dietzig passed away shortly before the legislative session began, and the Senate entered a temporary power-sharing framework while the seat was unfilled for a few weeks. All that said, special elections don't typically take long to materialize. They can happen in a matter of just a few weeks. Since this one would dictate the overall balance of the state Senate, expect it to gain lots of attention from both state parties. Reporting in St. Paul, I'm Quinn Gorham.
Thank you, Quinn. You can find the full reading of the verdict and recap of all the testimony in this week's trial on NorthernNewsNow.com and the Northern News Now app. We'll also have a reaction from both sides in the trial coming up tonight at 6.